God's a love that's divine, yours and it's mine like the sun.
Willfulness to willingness. He was a giant, 6'9" at least, wearing a bronze helmet and full body armor. He carried a javelin, a spear, and a sword. An attendant preceded him, carrying a large shield. The giant faced the Israelites and shouted out, "Choose you a man, and let him come down to me. If he prevail in battle against me and strike me down, we shall be slaves to you. But if I prevail and strike him down, you will be slaves to us and serve us." In the Israelite camp, no one moved. Who could win against such a terrifying opponent? Then a shepherd boy, who had come down from Bethlehem to bring food to his brothers, stepped forward and volunteered. King Saul objected. "You cannot go against this Philistine to do battle with him, for you are a lad, and he is a man of war from his youth." But the shepherd was adamant. He had faced more ferocious opponents than this, and he argued, "When the lion or the bear would come and carry off a sheep from the herd, I would go after him and strike him down and rescue it from his clutches." Saul had no other options. King Saul offered David his own sword and armor so that David would have a chance. David refused Saul's offer, saying, "I cannot walk in these, for I am unused to it." Instead, David picks up 5 smooth stones and puts them in his shoulder bag. Then he descends into the valley, carrying his shepherd's staff. Goliath looks at the boy coming toward him and is insulted. He was expecting to do battle with a seasoned warrior. Instead, he sees a shepherd boy, a boy from one of the lowliest of all professions, who seems to want to use his shepherd's staff as a weapon against Goliath's sword. Goliath says to David, "Come to me, that I may give your flesh to the birds of the heavens and the beasts of the fields." David then says to the Philistine, "You come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." Goliath says, "Am I a dog," gesturing to the staff, "that you should come to me with sticks?" David puts one of the stones into the leather pouch of a sling. David spins the sling once, twice, 3, 7, 8 times around, and then he releases the rock, and it hits Goliath squarely in the forehead. Goliath falls. David runs toward him and seizes the giant's sword and cuts off his head. I'm sorry to bring such blood and gore to our sanctuary. These images from David and Goliath from a video called David and Goliath on Crossroad Kids Videos. So today, we can take a breath. The battle's over. I know that was a tense moment for you. So today, being the first Sunday of the month, as we've continued this tradition all year long, on the first Sunday we talk about one of the 12 powers. And these are based on Charles Fillmore's work and a book that was assembled with his work called The 12 Powers. And Charles Fillmore believed that if we could perfectly assimilate and harmonize all of these 12 powers, that we could do the very things that Jesus Christ did. That we have this innate power within us if we can bring our minds into this place where we understand them, where we live them. And today we're talking about the power of will. It's about being willing to follow our hearts, follow our intuition, follow the presence of God, following that inner goodness that we all have within us. If we're willing to pay attention to that, then we can express the power of will. And I was inspired by Malcolm Gladwell's book, David and Goliath. This is a fabulous book. This book tells the story of David and Goliath only in small ways that I can breach today because it's such an incredible work. And Malcolm Gladwell is such an incredible storyteller. And our library, by the way, has this book in CDs. And I highly recommend that you check it out and listen to it. He speaks in the most beautiful, articulate way. And the way that he describes this story of David and Goliath and gives a perspective that I've never heard before. So I invite you to check that out, and I want to pay tribute to him for his work and the inspiration that I got from his work. This story takes place in the heart of ancient Palestine, in the Elah Valley. It's an area of breathtaking beauty. It reminds me of the Napa Sonoma area in California with rolling hills and wineries and wheat fields. It's an incredibly beautiful spot and important in history because a number of famous battles took place in this valley because of its location to Bethlehem and other cities. It's a fabulous, beautiful place. The Philistines were battle-tested and dangerous, sworn enemies of the Israelites. The Philistines were moving east, winding their way through the Elah Valley. Their goal was to capture the mountain ridge between Bethlehem, or near Bethlehem, and thereby splitting Saul's country in two. Saul, armed, gathered his men, hastened down the mountain. When Goliath shouted out to the Israelites, he was asking for what was known at that time as single combat. And what armies would do was, instead of having a gory battle between these huge armies, they would all decide on one person to represent the whole army. And then those two persons would go down and fight, and then the whole armies would honor whoever won that fight. So this is what Goliath was expecting. A warrior like himself to come forward in hand-to-hand combat. It never occurred to him that the battle would be fought on any other terms, and he was prepared to fight hand-to-hand. He wore armor weighing over 100 pounds. It had brass plates protecting his legs and his feet and his arms. He wore a heavy metal helmet. He had 3 separate weapons, all optimized for close contact or close combat. A sword, a javelin, and a spear. And it's easy to see why nobody wanted to fight this giant. And then David appears. David's a slinger, Slingers were a very special group of people. They carried a slingshot. And it was a pouch with 2 ropes attached to it, and they would swing it around, starting slow, and the circles would increase the more they were able to swing it, and then they would release it, hurling the rock forward. Slinging took an extraordinary amount of practice. And I can imagine that while David was tending his sheep, he was probably practicing his slinging. It said that Irish slingers could hit a coin as far away as they could see it. There are ancient pictures of slingers knocking birds out of the sky with pellets. 20th century Ethan Hirsch is a ballistics expert, and he estimated that a typical stone hurled by a slinger at a distance of 35 meters would have hit Goliath's head at a velocity of 34 meters a second, more than enough to penetrate his skull and knock him unconscious or render him dead. It's the same blow that would be similar to being shot by a .45 caliber pistol. So today we're talking about the power of will. And so we're all going to go home at night and make our slingshots and practice. Ed Rabel, a Unity minister, wrote, "Will is the choosing, directing, decision-making faculty of the mind. It has the capacity for us to say yes or to say no to opportunities and options in our life. Will is the highest expression. It's our consciousness consent. It's what drives us. The will is like our wheelhouse. It's where we sit and direct the experiences of our life. Many are challenged with the desire to be willful. Have you ever noticed? Something funny happens, I've noticed, when I am willful, right? When I want something to happen just the way that I want it to happen, I notice that I get stuck. Anybody else? It's like the creativeness is shut off. If I want something to happen and I stand in that desire, that willfulness, all of a sudden I don't have access to my creativity. I'm stuck in my old idea. Stuck like Goliath was stuck in his old idea. He expected to face a warrior like those he was used to. When we get stuck in our willfulness and others show up, we sometimes get resistance. Did you ever notice? That the more willful I am, the more others have a tendency to push against that willfulness. Isn't that great? Don't you just love that? Or don't you just wish everybody would just do the things that you want them to do in the way that you want them to do them? Wouldn't it be a great world? Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way because we get to move from willfulness to willingness. We get to practice this great truth. Yay! Our will determines our character. Other people often make assumptions about our character based upon our willfulness because it's one of the most evident characteristics that we have. You'll notice if somebody is really willful, you'll start to judge them or you'll start to oppose them. I guess I should use I words. You know, if somebody is really willful and really wanting something, I notice that sometimes for me, what comes up for me is resistance. Yeah? Versus somebody who says, wow, how can we work on this together? How can we create a solution that works for all of us? Don't see any of this in our world today, I'm sure. So we're going to look at the metaphysical interpretation or the spiritual interpretation of this story. What does it mean to me? What does it mean to us? When we look at the metaphysical or the spiritual aspects of a Bible story, or any story really, we're looking for the deeper meaning. And typically, when we look at metaphysics, every character in the story represents an aspect of ourself. Isn't that fun? And that's really what I like about it, because we get to see ourselves reflected in these other characters. And by doing so, we get insight about what can I do to build more character, to build in the truth into my awareness so that I can have an expanded consciousness and an expanded way of doing things as a spiritual being in this physical body. So let's look at the metaphysics. Goliath represents the unenlightened will. That willingness that I have to do it my way. I'm going to make it happen come hell or high water. And what's interesting, when you make that statement, both of them typically come. I'm just going to do it my way. He's the part of us that refuses to adapt to new information or new spiritual truths. You know, it's like all this armor that he has on him that he thinks is protecting him, in the same way that when we think, I'm going to stand in my opinion, in a sense we're putting on this suit of armor, and which is holding us down, keeping us stuck in that place of fear of change. I think it's great that, very symbolic, that the stone that David slung hit Goliath in the head. No coincidence there. Because what's happened is Goliath is so much into thinking, and when the stone hits him in the head, the thinking is gone. And in a metaphysical way, he moves into the Christ presence because the thinking has stopped, his stuckness has stopped, and wherever he is, I know he's a lot more open-minded than he was before he got hit with that stone. His armor literally keeps him from moving forward, keeps him from moving quickly. Then on the other hand, we have David. David represents the enlightened will. He's young, he's flexible, he's adaptive, he's doing things in a whole different way. He's a warrior in a whole different way. When he went to Saul, Saul was like, no, you can't do this. Saul had that same old mentality. You can't go to battle against Goliath because you're just a boy. Certainly you have to put on all this armor. And David is like, I can do it. You know, I got a new way of thinking. I have a new way of being. David is the enlightened spiritual will. David represents a willingness that acknowledges the outer fears, but moves according to inner guidance. See, this is where willingness comes in. It's like being able to notice all that's going on in our lives, in our challenges, and being able to connect within and say, okay, what is it? What is the truth? All this is happening. All these things are facts. So what can I do to approach these things that are facts? So how do we move from willfulness? We don't want to do it the other way around. We don't want to go from willingness to willfulness, for Pete's sake. We want to move from willingness to... We want to move from willfulness to willingness. They look both very similar on the page. And so often we can choose one or the other of them, right? And think we're choosing one. Oh, I'm being very willing as long as you do it my way. I like this saying, you can do anything you are willing toward. But the key is you have to be willing to accept whatever shows up and be willing to accept that and move forward with those facts, that situation, and be flexible in your willingness. Be willing to be strong. Be willing to be loving. Be willing to be more creative. Be willing to let go of having to do things the same way all the time. You can be anything that you are willing toward. I like the idea toward because it's about moving in a direction. You know, it's not saying I have to have it this way, but in a sense is to move towards it. If you want to be creative, you want to paint a picture, maybe it's not to say I'm going to draw this absolutely, but I'm going to move toward something creative. Because often it seems to me as soon as we say I'm going to make it happen my way, the creativity stops. Your challenges are not pointing to your weakness. They are showing you the areas where you can grow your strength. So often it seems to me that if I'm facing something that's difficult, I can get upset about it and be frustrated because it's not happening in the time I want it to happen or in the way that it happens. Or sometimes it shows me that I have an opportunity to know something more, do something more than I'm able to do in the moment. Does that make sense? You know, it's like it's when we are challenged, when we get stuck, if we could just say, okay, I'm not going to get upset with this. Somebody comes to you and they show a different opinion or they want to do something different than you, rather than seeing it as a challenge, see it as an opportunity to open that creative space, to be willing to discover something new, something more powerful than you have conceived it before. Oftentimes, our challenges point to the gifts that we have. Often, our challenges allow us to open up to spiritual, creative opportunities that we weren't even aware of. Turn to the Christ wisdom within you and use your innate gifts to overcome the challenge before you. And we can see this turning to the Christ wisdom, turning to that infinite wisdom, turning to that place of love, turning to that place of creativity, turning to that Buddha nature, that God nature, that beloved nature that is within us. You know, we're not turning to that Jesus. As we use the term in unity, Christ doesn't mean Jesus. Christ means that enlightened part of us, the God mind, the Buddha mind that we have within us. We want to turn to that and open to that and say, what is it that I can know? Okay, I'm willing, I'm able to listen to what it is that I can know to move in and through this challenging opportunity in a different way than I've done it before. So, in order to experience willingness, sometimes we have to release old thoughts and old beliefs that aren't working. We have to release ineffective ways of being. You got one? Got an ineffective way of being? You don't have to say it out loud, but just think about what it is. What is something that you can release? Judgment, unforgiveness. What is it that you can release? What is it that is armor that is hanging on you and encumbering you and holding you down, keeping you stuck? What thoughts, what beliefs might you have? And of course, for willingness to work, we have to be willing for it to work. I really believe this is the work of our soul, isn't it? It's what we're called here for, to do, to be willing to experience, to express the creative desire of spirit that desires to express itself in us, as us, because that is how spirit expresses itself, through us, through you. I release old ways, making room for new awareness. I release old ways, making room for new awareness. This is a denial. It's kind of like, it's a tool that we can use to kind of cleanse our mind, clean the cobwebs out of our mind. So I invite you to think of something that you might release. And let's say this together. I release old ways, making room for new awareness. Together. I release old ways, making room for new awareness. Where would willingness serve you in your life? What are you willing to be more willing towards? To be more loving, to be more patient, to be more creative, to be more empowered. Where would that be? Where would you be willing towards? What would you be more willing towards? You have infinite supply. The presence of God is within you, expressing itself as you. And this energy, this force, this love is the power of creativity. What can you be willing towards? Where in your life can willingness serve you, help you, make you powerful? Make you be like David, flexible, thinking out of the box. Choose willingness over willfulness. The result will be greater awareness and a deeper expression of peace, life, love, power, creativity, potential, harmony. A willingness to try new things brings creativity and freshness to my life. Is that true? I heard 3 nods. Okay, so think of something that you're willing to do. What is it that you're willing to do this week? That you're willing to move towards, to be willing towards in your life. Something creative. Some healing in a relationship, a healing in yourself. A discovery of a new truth. Putting it into place. A new way of being. You are powerful. Did you know that? Do you know how powerful you are? And to know how powerful you are, I think that's such a great teaching that we have, is that we recognize the powerfulness that we are. That the presence of God desires to express itself as you, as power, as creativity, as love, as peace, as joy, as prayerfulness. So, holding this thought, this idea, being willing. Let's affirm this affirmation together. A willingness to try new things brings creativity and freshness to my life. I invite you to close your eyes. Taking a deep breath. Breathing into the wholeness that you are. Breathing in to the joy, to the peace, to the powerfulness. And I invite you to look through your body and to relax any place that's holding on. Let go of the armor. Imagine yourself like David, young, alive, flexible. And to feel the powerfulness of this youthful mindset, this youthful willingness, this freedom. And take another deep breath and allow yourself to relax even more. Relaxing the muscles in your neck and your back, your shoulders. Relaxing into willingness. And affirm this willingness for every place in your mind, in your body. Willingness to do things different, to think outside the box. Willingness to be creative. A willingness to love yourself. To love yourself. To really love yourself. A willingness to love each one in your life. To move beyond your perceptions of how others should be. And just love. Breathing in and breathing out. And let's just relax for a moment or two. Breathing in and breathing out.
Where I live, there are